as she walked into the house with red stains on her skirt. Shaquille O'Neal saw her face and knew something was wrong. Then she whispered, "The bus driver did it again." What happened on that bus was worse than he imagined. A cruel man was hurting kids, and no one stopped him. But this time, a father stood up, and the world listened. Before continuing this heartbreaking story, let us know in the comment section, where are you watching from today? Let's begin our story. It was one of those quiet mornings in McDonough, Georgia. Spring sunlight came slow through the kitchen window, casting warm gold on the marble countertops of the O'Neal home. Shaquille O'Neal stood barefoot, flipping pancakes with a wide spatula in one hand and a Bluetooth headset in the other. He was wearing his usual early morning gear, black tank top, gray gym shorts, and a Lakers beanie that sat crooked on his head like he didn't care. His muscles filled the kitchen space without him trying. At 7 feet 1 inch, he seemed too big for any room, but in his daughter's world, he was never too big to be her dad. "Alexa, stop," he said calmly to the smart speaker, which had been playing some upbeat 90s R&B. The music faded. "Amaya, pancakes are ready, baby girl," he called out, his deep voice shaking the floor just a little. From upstairs, little feet thudded against the hardwood as Amaya O'Neal appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing fuzzy pink socks and rubbing sleep from her eyes. 10 years old, small for her age. Brown skin that glowed in the morning light. Her dark curls were in a messy bun with a yellow scrunchie barely holding them together. She wore a worn purple hoodie with a little unicorn on the chest, and pajama pants with planets on them. The planets had smiley faces. She was adorable, but her eyes, those eyes held more thoughts than most grown folks carried. Amaya shuffled down the stairs, dragging her favorite backpack, a bright red one covered in cartoon stickers. She plopped into a chair at the kitchen island. Shaq turned and gave her a big grin, that familiar warm smile only a dad could give. Well, look who's up and still on planet Earth. I thought maybe you blasted off to Jupiter in your sleep." Amaya gave a soft giggle, but looked tired. "Morning, Daddy," she said, resting her chin on her palm. "You sleep okay?" She nodded slowly. "I had a weird dream. I was swimming in fruit punch. It was sticky." Shaq chuckled and slid 2 fluffy pancakes onto her plate. "Fruit punch, huh? What did you eat before bed? Gummy worms again?" "Maybe," she mumbled, picking up her fork. He leaned on the counter and watched her eat. It was one of those moments that felt regular, but beautiful. The kind you didn't realize was special until later. Her little fingers cut into the pancake carefully, her eyes glancing out the window now and then, like something was pulling at her thoughts. "You okay, baby?" he asked gently, his eyes narrowing just a bit. Amaya hesitated. She blinked fast, then smiled too quick. "Yeah, I'm okay." Shaq didn't press, but he watched. Later, Amaya stood in the bathroom brushing her teeth. Shaq peeked in and knocked softly on the doorframe. "I put your favorite outfit on the bed," he said. "That little sunflower dress. You always say it makes you feel extra fancy." Amaya spat her toothpaste and wiped her mouth. "Can I wear the hoodie instead?" He raised a brow. "The unicorn one. You wore that yesterday, boo." "I know, but I like it. It's comfy." Shaq smiled faintly. "All right, hoodie it is." There was a pause between them, just a beat longer than usual. Amaya turned toward the mirror, pretending to fix her hair, but Shaq saw her eyes shift again, distant, thoughtful. He stepped inside the bathroom and kneeled beside her, one giant hand resting on her tiny back. "What's on your mind, huh? Talk to me." She looked up at him, then away. "Nothing, Daddy. I just don't want to go on the bus today, that's all." He frowned. "Why not?" She shrugged. "It's loud. Kids are mean sometimes." Shaq studied her. His eyes softened, but behind them something stirred. "You want me to drive you?" he asked. She shook her head quickly. "No, it's fine, I can go." He gave a nod, not fully convinced. "Okay, but if anybody, says or does something that makes you uncomfortable, you tell me, all right?" She nodded. "I promise." "Good," he said, then tapped her nose gently. "Now go get your hoodie. Your bus is going to be here in 5. By 7:45 a.m., the yellow bus was rumbling down the road. Shaq and Amaya stood in front of the house, the cool morning air brushing their skin. Birds chirped in the trees overhead. The neighbors were just starting to leave for work. Amaya held her red backpack in both hands, shifting from foot to foot. Shaq looked down at her, then crouched, so they were eye to eye. "You're gonna crush that science project today," he said. Amaya smiled, but didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the bus as it rolled to a stop. And that's when Shaq saw it. A flicker. Just for a second, Amaya's face changed. Her smile fell. Her shoulders tensed. It was like a switch had flipped inside her, and suddenly the light went out. "You okay?" he asked quickly. She nodded, but her voice was quiet. "Love you, Daddy." She threw her arms around his neck and hugged him tight, tighter than usual. He froze a moment, then hugged back, wrapping his arms gently around her small frame. "I love you more, little one." She pulled back and gave him a weak smile before turning and walking toward the bus. Shaq watched. From the sidewalk, it looked like just another school day. But he noticed the way she paused before climbing those steps, the way her body tightened when the driver looked down at her. The man behind the wheel was in his 50s, white, clean-shaven, thin lips, wrinkles set deep into his forehead like they'd been carved there from years of anger. His expression was flat, cold. Amaya stepped on board. The driver didn't say hello. He didn't smile. He just looked through the mirror at the other kids, adjusted it slightly, and started the engine. Shaq stood there, rooted to the sidewalk. The bus pulled away. And something about that whole moment sat wrong in his gut. Inside the house, Shaq tried to shake the feeling. He cleaned the kitchen. He lifted weights. He answered some emails. He was working on his next podcast episode, this one about fatherhood in the age of social media. But every 10 minutes, he looked at the clock. 9:30, 10:15, 11:00. He found himself walking into Amaya's room without meaning to. It smelled like strawberry lotion and cotton candy lip gloss. Her books were stacked neatly on the desk. Her journal lay half hidden under her pillow. Shaq sat on the edge of her bed and looked around. His big hands gripped his knees. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't know what, but something was wrong. He could feel it. And the worst part? He hadn't stopped it. Not yet. It was around 3:20 p.m. when Shaq heard the front door creak open. He had been sitting in his home office, trying to focus on a sponsorship call. But the moment he heard the door, he muted his mic and stood up. "Amaya?" he called out. There was no answer. Shaq walked down the hallway toward the front room, his heavy footsteps echoing softly on the floor. The sunlight was still pouring through the living room windows, casting long shadows across the rug. Then he saw her. Amaya stood just inside the door, frozen. Her backpack hung from one shoulder, and her arms were limp at her sides. "Hey, baby girl," he said gently, stepping closer. "How was school?" She didn't answer. Her face was pale, too pale, and her lips were pressed into a tight line. Her eyes stayed low, locked on the floor. Then Shaq noticed the shirt. Her purple hoodie was still on, but beneath it on the right side of her chest and across the bottom of her sleeve were red stains. They weren't huge, but they were there, dark, drying, smeared. Shaq's voice changed instantly. "Amaya," he said, more serious now. "Are you hurt?" He rushed over and crouched in front of her, his giant hands gently grabbing her arms and looking for a wound. "What is this? Are you bleeding? What happened?" Amaya looked up at him, her bottom lip quivering. "It's not mine." Shaq blinked. "What?" she sniffled. "It's not my blood. The bus driver. He did it again." Shaq's whole body stilled. "What do you mean, again?" His voice was low now, shaky, careful. "What happened, Amaya?" Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't cry. She looked tired, like she'd been holding something in for too long. She spoke slowly. "There's a boy in the back, Jaden. He's in 5th grade. He sits by himself a lot. The driver told him to sit down, but he already was. And then he got up and grabbed him." Shaq's hands tightened slightly on her arms, but he didn't say a word. He just listened. Amaya's voice trembled. "He grabbed him by the shirt and slammed him back into the seat. I saw his nose hit the metal bar. It started bleeding. A lot." Shaq's heart pounded in his chest. "I took some napkins from my backpack. I tried to help him. He gave me a hug before he got off the bus. That's when the blood got on me," she added softly. Shaq slowly stood up, his face unreadable. His daughter looked up at him and whispered, "He only picks on the black kids." Shaq's jaw tightened. His voice cracked when he asked, "Has this happened before?" She nodded. "A few times. Not like today, but he yells at us. He tells us we're stupid. Once he told Jaden to go back to where he came from. He calls us names when no teachers are there." Shaq took a deep breath and walked slowly across the room. He put both hands on the kitchen counter, staring down, his shoulders rising and falling. His back looked like a mountain about to crack open. He turned around, his eyes filled with something Amaya hadn't seen before. Not anger, not rage. Something deeper, something heavier. "Why didn't you tell me this before, Maya?" he asked, his voice raw. She hugged herself. "Because I didn't want anyone to get in trouble, or get hurt worse, but today, he went too far." Shaq knelt down again, wrapping his arms around her and holding her close. "You're not in trouble, do you hear me?" he said, his voice shaking. "You did everything right, you told me, and now we're gonna do something." Amaya buried her face in his chest. "I was scared." "I know, baby, I know." He pulled back and looked her in the eyes. "You're safe now, I promise you." Then, slowly, he stood and walked to the kitchen table. His phone was still sitting there. He picked it up with steady hands, opened the dialer, and pressed 3 numbers, 911. 911, what's your emergency?" Shaq's voice was calm, but cold. The kind of cold that came from holding back a storm. "Yes, I need to report an assault that happened on a school bus. My daughter just came home with someone else's blood on her shirt. A child was attacked by the bus driver." The dispatcher's voice changed tone quickly. "Is the child who was assaulted still with you?" Number he got off at his stop. "My daughter was a witness. She saw everything. And this isn't the first time." "Okay, sir. We'll dispatch an officer to your address. Can I get your name?" "Shaquille O'Neal." There was a pause. "Yes, sir. Officers will be there shortly." Shaq hung up and looked at Amaya, who was now sitting quietly on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, arms around them. He walked over and sat beside her. "Do you want to change out of the hoodie?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Number I want them to see it." Shaq stared at her. In that moment, she looked older than 10. She looked brave. About 15 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled into the driveway. A tall black officer and a shorter white one stepped out. They approached the door, and Shaq opened it before they could knock. "Mr. O'Neal," the black officer said respectfully, holding out a hand. "I'm Officer Ramirez. This is Officer Denton. We're here about your call." Shaq nodded and let them in. Amaya stayed seated, clutching the red-stained sleeve in her lap. Shaq introduced them. This is my daughter Amaya. She's the one who witnessed what happened. Officer Ramirez crouched in front of her, his face gentle. Hey there, Amaya. I know this might be a little scary, but we just want to understand what happened today. Can you tell me what you saw? Amaya nodded and repeated everything. Her voice didn't shake this time. She described the bus ride, the insults, the grabbing, the blood, Jaden's face, the way he didn't even fight back, the napkins, the hug. The officers listened carefully, not interrupting. Officer Denton took notes. When she was done, Ramirez said quietly, "You're very brave, Amaya. Thank you for telling us." Then he turned to Shaq. "We'll need the bus number, the driver's name if you have it, and the school district information." "I'll give you everything," Shaq said. "And I want this taken seriously, because from what my daughter told me, this is more than just today," Ramirez nodded. "We'll also need to file a full report and open an investigation. Do you know if the other child, Jaden, has parents we can speak with?" Shaq thought for a moment. "I don't know them personally, but I can find out." "We'll handle that," Denton added. "But I need to be honest with you. These things, they can take time. And unless we have video footage or another adult witness, it can be hard to prove." Shaq didn't blink. "My daughter's word should be enough, but if you need more, I'll get it. Trust me." After the officers left, Shaq stood in the doorway, staring at the street. The sun was still out, but everything looked different now. Like the world had shifted slightly. Like something had broken. He turned and looked at the stained shirt again. Then he walked to the living room, pulled out his phone, and opened Instagram. He snapped a photo of the hoodie, laying it flat on the couch, with the red stains clearly visible. Then he typed, "This is my daughter's hoodie. The red stains, not hers. Her school bus driver slammed another black kid into a seat so hard his nose bled. My daughter tried to help him. And this isn't the first time. If the system won't protect our children, we will. Protect black kids. Justice for Jaden." He posted it. And within 5 minutes, the world started watching. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Shaq stood in the kitchen, the smell of coffee in the air, but he hadn't touched his cup. He leaned on the counter, scrolling through hundreds of comments on his Instagram post from the night before. He had expected people to react, but not like this. Thousands of shares, news pages reposting it, comments from parents, teachers, kids. Some said thank you. Others said, "It happened to my child too." But mixed into the outrage were voices of doubt. Why are we taking a kid's word at face value? Shaq's just using his fame to stir up trouble. This is about discipline, not race. Shaq locked his phone and exhaled through his nose. He didn't care about doubters. He cared about the truth. And what the truth showed him was simple. If he didn't act fast, the system would bury this like it always did. At 9:30 a.m., Shaq arrived at the school district office. He wore a plain black hoodie and jeans, but he still stood out, 7'1", built like a building, and wearing a face that said he wasn't here for pleasantries. The front desk lady blinked when she looked up. Mr. O'Neill. I need to speak to the Director of Transportation, now, he said firmly. She glanced at her monitor. Do you have an appointment? I called yesterday and didn't get a call back. So now I'm here. This is about a child being assaulted on a school bus. My child witnessed it. She came home with another kid's blood on her. The woman stiffened. Please wait a moment. She made a call. A few minutes later, a man in his late 50s walked into the lobby. Clean-shaven, pale skin, gray suit, thinning hair. He looked like someone who had worked behind a desk for too long. Mr. O'Neill, he said, extending his hand. I'm Thomas Braxton, Director of Transportation for the district. Would you like to come back to my office? Shaq didn't take his hand. I want answers. Braxton nodded awkwardly and led him down the hallway. The office was clean, bland, and cold. A framed photo of yellow buses hung on the wall behind the desk. There was a small bottle of hand sanitizer on the table between them. Braxton folded his hands as he sat down. I understand there was an incident on one of our buses. That's putting it lightly, Shaq replied, arms crossed. A boy was slammed into a seat by your driver. My daughter came home with his blood on her shirt. And she says it's not the first time. Braxton cleared his throat. Well, we take all reports seriously. Of course, we do have policies for student behavior and driver conduct. I'm not talking about policy, Shaq said sharply. I'm talking about assault, abuse, racism. Braxton blinked, caught off guard. You're accusing the driver of racism. I'm not accusing, Shaq said. I'm telling you what my daughter and other students have experienced. He singles out black kids, calls them names, humiliates them. Braxton hesitated, then pulled up something on his computer screen. I'll be honest. This driver, Mr. Kent Mullins, has had a few complaints filed against him. Shaq leaned forward. How many? 7. 7 complaints? Braxton nodded. Over the last 4 years. Mostly from parents at South Ridge Elementary. A few mentioned rough language. One mentioned grabbing a student. And what did you do? Shaq asked, his tone rising. We issued warnings, Braxton said quietly. And, retraining. Shaq stared at him. Warnings? He said. So a man gets 7 complaints about abusing children, and you just tell him to try better next time? Braxton shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. We have a union and policies. Removing a driver without hard evidence can be challenging. Shaq stood up slowly. His voice dropped lower. You had hard evidence. You had the complaints. You had parents willing to talk. You just didn't want the headache. Mr. O'Neill. No, Shaq interrupted, pointing a finger. You protected a man who hurt kids because it was easier than doing the right thing. You put my daughter in that bus. You let her sit there day after day with someone who could have seriously hurt her. Braxton said nothing. Shaq took a deep breath, leaned in close and said, Now I want his name off the bus, off the payroll, off the district. Braxton swallowed hard. I can't make that decision alone. There's protocol. Then you'd better find someone who can. Back at home, Amaya was sitting at the dining table, doing her homework. Her mother, Letitia, Shaq's ex-wife, was beside her, flipping through a notebook. Letitia was a nurse, tall and calm, with soft brown skin and bright eyes that didn't miss a thing. When Shaq walked in, she stood. Well, she asked. He looked exhausted. They knew. They've known for years. Letitia pressed her lips together. Of course they did. She told you everything, right? He asked, nodding toward Amaya. Yes. And I already called Jaden's mom. Her name's Carla Simmons. She works nights. She had no idea this happened. Shaq nodded slowly. We need to find other parents. There's more. I know there's more. Later that evening, Shaq sat with Amaya in the living room. He watched her play with her tablet, tapping gently on the screen. But he could see it in her eyes. She was still carrying the weight. He leaned forward. You okay, baby girl? She looked up. Yeah, just tired. He nodded. I know. She hesitated, then asked, Did they believe you? Shaq smiled gently. They didn't want to, but they had no choice. Amaya leaned against him. Will he go away now, the bus driver? Shaq put his arm around her. We're working on that, and you're not getting back on that bus again, ever. Good, she whispered. That night, Shaq sat down in his office. The stained hoodie still lay folded on the desk. He stared at it for a long time, then picked up his phone again. This time, he recorded a video. The camera showed only his face, tired, heavy with emotion, but steady. "I don't usually post stuff like this," he began. "But I need people to know the truth." He paused. "My daughter came home yesterday with another child's blood on her shirt. Not from a fight, not from an accident, from a school bus driver. A grown man who slammed a fifth grader into a seat so hard, his nose bled." Shaq's voice cracked. "And when she told me, I wanted to scream, but instead I called the police. I went to the district. And guess what? This driver had 7 other complaints. 7. All from parents like me, and no one did anything." He leaned forward. "This isn't about one bad man. This is about a system that protects him. A system that says, it's just a kid, when a black child comes home hurt. A system that thinks we won't fight back." He paused, then added softly, "But we will. We are." He ended the video. Within an hour, it had over 200,000 views. The next day, local news stations called his agent. They wanted interviews. Schools wanted statements. Parents started messaging him directly, telling their own stories. One mother wrote, "My son has been bullied by that same driver. He comes home crying. Thank you for standing up." Another father said, "We filed a report last year. Nothing happened. Let us know if you're organizing something." Shaq read them all. He didn't want fame for this. He wanted justice. 2 days later, the school district finally made a statement. They announced that Mr. Kent Mullins had been placed on temporary administrative leave pending investigation. Shaq stared at the article on his phone. "Leave? That was it?" He shook his head. That same day, Officer Ramirez called. "We spoke with Jaden's mom. He's okay but shaken. She's filing charges. I also wanted to let you know, we've requested footage from the bus camera." Shaq blinked. "There's a camera?" Ramirez sighed. "Supposed to be. Some buses have them. We'll see if this one did." Shaq exhaled. "Let me know the second you find out." "Will do. And Mr. O'Neill?" "Yeah?" "You're doing the right thing. Just don't expect them to make it easy." Shaq's voice hardened. "I don't." That night, Shaq stood alone in the hallway outside Amaya's room. The door was cracked open. He watched her sleep for a moment, peacefully, blanket pulled up to her chin. His phone buzzed in his hand. It was a message from an unknown number. It said, "I have proof. I recorded him on my phone. My daughter goes to South Ridge. He called her a monkey. She has it on video." Shaq stared at the message. Then he replied, "Send it, please. Friday morning, 8:17 a.m. The air was heavy with tension. Shaq hadn't slept much. He sat at the kitchen table, holding his phone tightly, staring at the message he'd received the night before. "I have proof. I recorded him on my phone. My daughter goes to South Ridge. He called her a monkey. She has it on video." He felt it in his chest, the slow boil of anger, mixed with something more painful, a grief, a frustration, a helplessness that made his large hands tremble. He clicked the video. It was shaky, recorded from a backpack pocket. The angle showed the floor of the school bus, a few shoes, some giggles. Then a loud voice. "Sit down, monkey girl. You don't get to stand up until I say so." The laughter stopped. Shaq heard the silence, then the sound of a little girl crying. His jaw locked. He hit pause. His vision blurred. His fingers curled into fists. The rage inside him rose, pressing against his chest. This wasn't about one kid. This was a sickness. That afternoon, Shaq arranged a meeting with the parents, who had reached out. They gathered in a small community center off Broad Street, a place with dusty folding chairs and dim lights, but filled with parents who were tired of being ignored. There were about 16 people in the room, mostly black moms and dads, a few Latino families, and one white teacher with her arms folded across her chest and fire in her eyes. Shaq stood in the middle of the room. No podium, no stage. Just him, tall, steady, wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans. He looked around at the faces, tired, frustrated, but hopeful. "My name is Shaquille O'Neal," he began. "But today, I'm just Amaya's dad." There were soft nods. "She came home last week with blood on her shirt. Not her blood. A boy named Jaden. The bus driver, Mr. Mullins, did it. Slammed him into a seat. You all know what I'm talking about." More nods now. A mother in a nursing uniform raised her hand. "My son Isaiah rides that same bus. Came home with bruises on his arm once. Said the driver yanked him back when he stood up." Another father spoke. "I filed a complaint last year. My daughter said he spit near her and told her she smelled funky. Thought it was just mean old man talk. I didn't think—" He trailed off. The white teacher stepped forward. "I teach 5th grade. I've heard my students talk about mean Mr. Kent. I thought it was just strict rules. But some of them stopped riding the bus. Some started walking. I should have asked more questions." Shaq listened. Every word was a wound, but every voice a weapon. After the meeting, a young woman approached Shaq. She was about 30, with short, curly hair and thick glasses. "I'm Rachel," she said. "I'm a freelance journalist. I was hoping to write about this, if that's okay." Shaq studied her for a moment. "What kind of writing?" "Truth," she said. "Real stories, not spin, not quotes taken out of context." He nodded slowly. "You've got a daughter?" She shook her head. "Number, but I was that little girl once." Shaq felt something shift in his chest. He handed her his card. "Call me tomorrow. You can sit with us, hear Amaya's story." Saturday morning, Shaq sat with Amaya in the living room. She wore soft purple pajamas and hugged her favorite stuffed rabbit. The morning light filtered through the blinds, painting golden stripes across the carpet. Rachel sat across from them, notebook in her lap. "I just want to ask you some questions," she said gently. "Only what you're comfortable with." Amaya nodded slowly. "Do you remember the first time Mr. Mullins made you feel unsafe?" Amaya's lips pressed together. She looked at Shaq. "It's okay," he said gently. "You can say it." She looked back at Rachel. "It was a rainy day, maybe 3 months ago. A boy was playing with his pencil too loud. Mr. Mullins got up and yelled at him. He said, 'You're not in the jungle, act like a human.'" Rachel's pen froze. Shaq's jaw tightened. Amaya continued, voice quiet. "After that, he started picking on the black kids. He called us slow, loud, wild. If we moved too fast, he'd yell. One day, he told Jaden he looked like a chimp." Rachel blinked hard. "Did you ever tell a teacher?" "I told Miss Carver. She said she'd talk to someone, but nothing happened." Shaq looked at Rachel. "We've got video now, audio, complaints, witnesses. We're not staying quiet anymore." Rachel nodded. "I'll write it, word for word." The story was published the next day. Blood on the bus, a district's silence in the face of racism. It was shared over 2 million times in 48 hours. News outlets started calling, CNN, MSNBC, even BBC. Shaq refused most interviews. But he went live on Instagram again, sitting on his back porch, wearing a hoodie, Amaya next to him, holding her rabbit. "My daughter is brave," he said. "She stood up, so now I'm standing too." That short clip was viewed 12 million times. The school board held an emergency press conference that Monday. But the pressure was too strong. Parents showed up outside with signs. "Protect our kids. Accountability now. No more Mr. Mullins." Some brought their kids, who held up pictures they had drawn. School buses with red marks, little stick figures crying. Inside the press room, the superintendent spoke stiffly. "We are aware of the allegations. We have placed Mr. Mullins on administrative leave, pending further investigation." A reporter interrupted. "What do you say to parents who reported this man before and were ignored?" The superintendent looked stunned. I I don't have details of those specific cases. Shouldn't you? Another asked. There are 7 complaints. The cameras zoomed in. The superintendent stammered. That night, Shaq got another message. A video file. This time from a boy named Marcus, 7th grade. He had filmed Mr. Mullins telling a black student, "You people are always late. No wonder your daddies leave." Shaq sent the video directly to the local police department. He called Officer Ramirez. "This is a hate crime," he said. Ramirez sighed. "You're right. We're escalating the case." 2 days later, Kent Mullins was arrested outside his home. The charges: assault of a minor child endangerment, use of hate speech in a public institution, pending federal hate crime investigation. The footage of his arrest made the evening news. Shaq didn't smile. He just sat with Amaya on the porch, holding her hand. Justice wasn't celebration. Justice was protection. Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. A soft fog hung over the streets of Atlanta. But in front of the Southridge School Board building, the air crackled with something far louder than weather. The voice of a community waking up. Hundreds stood outside the glass-paneled building. Some held signs, "Justice for our kids," "End the silence." Children are not targets. Mothers with strollers. Grandparents in folding chairs. Teenagers wrapped in hoodies. Eyes fierce with purpose. Shaq stood at the front, taller than most, wearing a black hoodie with Amaya's drawing on it. A yellow school bus with 2 red marks. A child crying in the corner of a seat. Underneath it were the words she wrote herself. "Tell the truth, even when it's scary." Amaya stood beside him, wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, holding the very same red-stained shirt in her hands like a flag. The crowd shifted as Shaq stepped forward, megaphone in hand. His broad shoulders seemed even wider now. Not with muscle, but with the weight of a cause. He cleared his throat, his deep voice steady. "My daughter was silent for months because she thought no one would believe her, because she thought people would get hurt." He paused. "She was right, and that's the problem." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "She came home with someone else's blood on her shirt, and the people in charge told us to be patient. To trust the process." His jaw clenched. "But that process let a man terrorize kids for years. That process ignored 7 complaints. That process is broken, and we're here to fix it." A cheer rose from the crowd. Amaya looked up at her father, her eyes wide and proud. Shaq raised the shirt in the air. "This isn't just a stain. It's the proof they didn't want to see. It's the silence they protected. And it's not happening anymore." Inside the building, School Board Director Leslie Barnes watched the protest through the tinted glass. She was in her mid-50s, with short silver hair and sharp cheekbones. She turned to the deputy superintendent. "This is getting out of hand." The man, thin and nervous, adjusted his tie. "Do we cancel the meeting?" She shook her head. But we need a statement, something strong." "What about the driver's arrest?" "We say it's being handled legally, but we don't admit fault. Not yet." The man hesitated. "But the video," she cut him off. "I've seen the video. But that doesn't make this a systemic issue." He didn't reply. Back outside, a small stage had been set up. A local pastor, Reverend Jacobs, stepped up. His voice was slow, deliberate, with a southern drawl that carried emotion like thunder. "I've buried too many children who were silenced before they could speak. I won't bury their truth." The crowd clapped. A teacher came next, Ms. Rollins. A white woman in her 30s with a quiet voice and tears in her eyes. "I work in this district. I love these kids, and I failed them by staying quiet. We all did. It's time to listen. Not just to the loud ones, but to the scared ones too." Her words hit harder than any shout. Then came parents. One by one, they told their stories. "My son walked 2 miles just to avoid that bus. My daughter asked if being black meant she had to be scared forever. Each voice added another brick to the wall of truth that was now impossible to ignore. Inside, the school board meeting began. Leslie Barnes sat in the center, flanked by 4 other board members. Each wore a stiff suit and an even stiffer expression. But they looked nervous, because the protest was no longer outside. It was inside too. The boardroom had filled with parents, teachers, even students. Shaq entered last. When he walked in, the room quieted, not out of fear, but out of gravity. His presence filled the space. He walked to the front row and sat beside Amaya, who squeezed his hand. Leslie cleared her throat. "We appreciate your attendance today. We understand this is an emotional time, and we want to assure you we are taking the matter seriously." "Seriously?" a mother interrupted from the back. "You ignored us for years," another parent stood. "You told me my son was exaggerating, that Mr. Mullins was stern." Leslie tried to regain control. "Please, we'll have time for public comment." But the dam had broken. One after another, people stood up. They didn't wait their turn. They didn't ask for permission. A teenage girl held up her phone and played a recording, the same one with Mr. Mullins calling a child Monkey Girl. You could hear a gasp from one of the board members. A father stepped forward and laid down photos of bruises. "He did this to my son. You protected him." Leslie looked shaken. "We will launch a full review." Shaq stood up. The room went still. His voice was calm, cold. "Number, you don't get to review this in a back room. You don't get to disappear it behind some statement. We're done with quiet." He turned to the crowd. "Every person in this room has a voice, and today they used it. So now, either you start listening, or we start voting people out." Applause filled the room, and for once the board didn't gavel it down. That night, Shaq sat with Amaya on the living room couch. She leaned against him, tired but smiling for the first time in days. "You were brave today," he said, brushing her hair back. "I was scared," she admitted. He nodded. "Me too." She looked up at him. "Do you think they heard us?" He thought about it, about the looks on the board members' faces, about the videos, about the stories, about the silence finally being broken. "Yeah," he said. "They heard you, baby." He kissed her forehead. 2 days later, the headlines read, "School Board under fire after community outcry." Shaquille O'Neal leads movement to protect children from racism in schools. Hate crime charges under review against school bus driver. And in smaller letters, the silence is ending. The chamber was packed. City council hearings were normally quiet affairs, half-empty rooms, bored journalists. But not today. Today, the walls buzzed with emotion. Parents lined the pews, their faces determined. Teachers clutched folders of written testimonies. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder with their cameras and recorders. At the front of the room sat the council members, flanked by legal advisors and public education officials. And in the front row, as tall and unmistakable as ever, sat Shaquille O'Neal, wearing a navy blue suit, his hands folded, his face unreadable. Amaya sat beside him, more composed now, but still clutching the same red-stained shirt, gently folded in her lap like sacred cloth. Shaq didn't need a microphone to draw attention, but he had one anyway. The moderator, a middle-aged black councilwoman with short dreadlocks and sharp eyes, tapped her gavel. "We now invite Mr. Shaquille O'Neal to present his remarks to the council." Shaq stood, towering over the podium. He looked around, not at the cameras, but at the people, the kids. He cleared his throat. "My name is Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not here as a celebrity. I'm here as a father." He paused, his voice lowered. "And I'm also here as a citizen, who's tired of systems making excuses for cruelty." He held up a printed photo of Amaya's shirt, the one with the bloodstains. The room went quiet. This shirt is not just cotton and thread. It's what happens when you ignore complaints, when you protect the wrong people, when you choose convenience over courage. His voice trembled, but he kept going. My daughter came home wearing another child's blood, a little boy who was slammed into a seat by a man who had already been reported 6 times. He raised a second photo, a screenshot of the official school report, marked "No action required." And every time, nothing happened. A father in the crowd muttered, "Damn right," under his breath. Shaq stepped back. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to demand solutions. He took out a folder from his coat pocket. I propose a new state-level policy called the Amaya Initiative. A murmur ran through the chamber. It will require the following. He held up one finger. All school buses must install internal and external surveillance cameras within the next academic year. 2 fingers. Mandatory anti-bias and trauma-informed training for all transportation and school staff. 3. Independent review boards, made up of parents, educators, and students, to investigate complaints involving minors. And finally, 4. A zero-tolerance policy for racial harassment or physical aggression from any school employee, period. The chamber erupted in applause. Amaya looked up at her dad, eyes shimmering. Councilmember Davis, the chairwoman, raised a hand to calm the crowd. Mr. O'Neill, this is bold, he nodded. It has to be. Another council member, a white man in his 50s with a skeptical look, leaned into his mic. With all due respect, this will cost the district millions. Where do you propose we get that money? Shaq didn't flinch. You always find the money when you want a new stadium, he said. You always find it when it benefits someone with influence. He looked the man in the eye. So you'll find it now. Because this time it's for the kids. The room went silent for a beat. And then a slow clap began from the back. A young woman in a college hoodie. Then a teacher. Then 2. Then the room filled with thunderous applause. Shaq stepped down. He didn't smile. He wasn't here for applause. The clip from the City Hall hearing went viral. Amaya initiative trended for days. CNN, MSNBC, local and national news. Every outlet picked up the story. Shaq appeared on Good Morning America, holding his daughter's hand. I can't protect her from every bad thing, he said softly, but I can fight to make the system less cruel. His voice cracked slightly. She's brave. So I have to be too. Celebrities spoke up. Kerry Washington, LeBron James, Viola Davis. They shared Amaya's words. This happened to me too as a kid, but nobody believed me, one influencer wrote. Donations poured in. Not just money, but letters, drawings from kids, poems from young students. A 10-year-old boy from Detroit sent his own red t-shirt and a note that read, For Amaya, you helped me not be scared anymore. At home, Shaq sat at the dining room table. Paperwork spread out in front of him. Legal documents, policy drafts, interview schedules. But his mind was heavy. He looked up as Amaya tiptoed into the kitchen. You okay, baby? She nodded, but her voice was small. Can't sleep. Come here, he said gently, patting the chair beside him. She climbed into his lap, like she used to when she was 4, her cheek pressed against his chest. Is it okay that I don't want to talk about it all the time? She whispered. Shaq's arms wrapped around her protectively. Of course, baby. You're a kid first, always. They sat in silence. I liked what you said at the meeting, she murmured, about the system being less cruel. He smiled, but his eyes stayed on a photo on the wall, a younger Amaya in a sunflower dress. I just want you to grow up safe. Not afraid of getting on a school bus, she nodded. I think other kids will feel safer now. He kissed the top of her head. They will. Because of you. 2 weeks later. The chamber filled once again. The city council prepared to vote on the Amaya initiative. Tension was thick. Council member Davis called for order. All those in favor of the proposal? Hands raised. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unanimous. Cheers broke out. Shaq exhaled deeply and hugged Amaya tightly as she buried her face in his chest. It was done. Outside City Hall, reporters crowded around Shaq and Amaya. Mr. O'Neill, what's next? He looked into the lens. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. We're taking this statewide. Then nationwide. He smiled down at his daughter. For every kid who came home afraid, we're coming for the silence. And we're not stopping. Later, that night in Shaq's home, a new frame hung beside his trophies and awards. Inside it, Amaya's red-stained shirt, carefully preserved behind glass. Below it, a plaque read, "Let this never happen again. The Amaya Initiative, 2025. Shaq stared at it for a long while. Not as a champion, but as a father. A few months later, early morning, South Fulton, Georgia. Sunlight peeked through the curtains, casting soft shadows across the kitchen floor. The smell of scrambled eggs and turkey bacon filled the air. The sound of a sizzling pan, a coffee maker gurgling, and birds singing just outside the window made the home feel peaceful again. Shaquille O'Neal stood by the stove, barefoot, in a plain gray t-shirt and pajama pants. His eyes were a little tired, but there was a calmness to his face that hadn't been there in a long time. He turned the eggs with a wooden spatula and looked over his shoulder. Amaya, baby girl, you ready yet? Upstairs, there was the sound of soft footsteps. Then she appeared, 10 years old, backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair neatly braided into 2 long pigtails with blue beads, clicking gently as she walked. Amaya smiled sleepily as she entered the kitchen. Morning, Daddy, Shaq smiled wide. Morning, sunshine. He bent down and gave her a quick side hug, inhaling the gentle scent of her Vanilla Shea shampoo. Your favorite? Eggs, turkey bacon, toast with honey. Amaya sat at the table, eyeing the plate. Thanks, Daddy. He watched her quietly for a moment as she ate. There was a lightness in her again. The tension in her shoulders was gone. Her eyes didn't dart to the window every time she heard a car engine outside. He noticed all those small things now. You nervous about the new route? He asked softly. She looked up. A little, but I met the new driver yesterday. She was nice. She had this big smile, like Grandma's. Shaq grinned. Miss Lena, Amaya nodded. Yeah. She said she used to be a school counselor before she drove buses. She's good people, Shaq said, grabbing his own coffee mug and taking a sip. And this time, baby, that bus has 2 cameras, a panic button, and a hotline number on the side window. If anyone acts wrong, they won't get away with it. Amaya looked thoughtful. That's because of us, right? Shaq sat across from her and leaned in. That's because of you. She smiled, shyly at first, but then it widened. The two of them stood together, watching the street. The new bus rolled into view, freshly painted, bright yellow, and spotless. The number, 426, was stenciled neatly in blue on the front bumper. Miss Lena, a warm-faced woman in her 50s, with short, curly hair and gold hoop earrings, gave a wave through the windshield as she pulled up. She opened the door and stepped down. Well, look who's up early, she beamed. Amaya giggled. Shaq stepped forward. Miss Lena, this is my whole world right here. Just like we talked about. You keep her safe. Miss Lena placed a gentle hand over her heart. You have my word, Mr. O'Neill. And I ain't scared of nobody. Not even rowdy 5th graders, Shaq laughed. You better not be. Amaya hugged her dad tightly. He bent down, eye level with her. His giant hands cupped her shoulders gently. You remember what I told you, she nodded. I don't have to be afraid to speak up. Exactly. And if anyone ever makes you feel small again, I tell someone, right away, and I don't carry it alone. His eyes welled slightly. I'm so proud of you, Amaya. You were stronger than most grown folks I know. She kissed his cheek. I love you, Daddy. He watched her walk up the bus steps, her backpack bouncing gently behind her. Before the door closed, she turned around and waved. Shaq waved back. The engine hummed softly and the bus pulled away. And for the first time in a long while, Shaq didn't feel fear as it disappeared down the street. The house was quiet. Shaq sat in his office, surrounded by photos, some of him on the court, some of him on talk shows. But right above his desk, in a glass frame with black trim, hung the shirt, the red-stained shirt. Below it, the engraved plaque read, "Let this never happen again. The Amaya Initiative, 2025. He stared at it for a long time, not with pain anymore, but with purpose. He picked up his phone, scrolled through the dozens of emails waiting for him. School boards in Ohio, Texas, even California, asking how to implement similar reforms. He opened his notes app, typed one sentence. Phase 2, National Expansion. Amaya walked into her new classroom. The other students greeted her with smiles. One boy, the same boy whose blood stained her shirt months ago, sat beside her. "Hey," he said quietly. "I heard what you and your dad did." Amaya smiled gently. "It wasn't just us," he nodded. "Still, thanks." The teacher walked in, a young black woman with a head wrap and warm eyes. "Good morning, class," she said with a big smile. "Today, we're starting with something new. A project on courage. People who stood up when it mattered most." She wrote one word on the board in big letters. Bravery. Amaya looked down at her notebook and began to write. A soft instrumental version of Rise Up by Andra Day plays gently in the background. We see a school bus rolling through a peaceful neighborhood, kids laughing inside. A group of parents holding up signs at a school board meeting that read, "Protect all children." A mother in Michigan reading an article titled, "How One Girl's Story Changed State Law." A classroom in California watching a video of Shaq's City Hall speech. A high schooler reading the Amaya Initiative guidebook on student safety. And then, back to Shaq's home office, a close-up of the framed shirt, the stain still visible, unmistakable, untouchable. Underneath it, a new photo. Amaya smiling in front of her school with her friends, her arms around them, all of them beaming, safe, free. Sometimes it only takes one voice to shatter the silence, and one father's roar to make the world listen. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comment section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification.